Hello, everyone, and welcome back. Today I have a special treat. I am here today for a little interview with Amanda Arcadia, and she is this amazing guide who specializes in helping people through life's big transitions, those big shake-up moments like the moment of getting a major diagnosis that changes your life, for a big spiritual awakening moment, a tower moment, a kundalini awakening, the integration of an ayahuasca ceremony, or those moments like where we suddenly lose our job or go through a divorce. When life gets shaken up, Amanda is someone who is there. And she is absolutely amazing at what she does, at helping and guiding people through. And she and I have just connected so much over our shared Pisces moons. We both are Pisces moon natives. And today we wanted just to talk a little bit about wellness and having trust and faith, which is so important when navigating life's transitions and when you have a Pisces moon. So Amanda, welcome.
Thank you, Maya. Thank you so much for having me on. I'm really excited to have a little chat with you about this very important topic, faith.
Yeah. So have you always, like throughout your life, have you always kind of had faith in something more? Like faith in a higher power or something beyond this world?
Yeah, I would say so for sure. I didn't have words for it, obviously, when I was a kid, but I do have memories of seeing beyond the veil, I guess you could say. Like, I remember I literally saw a gnome once sitting in a tree in my backyard when I was a kid. So I think, and then obviously over time, as I got older, like, things kind of tend to shut down, but I always had some sort of a connection to, the awareness that there's more to life than what we see with the physical, with our physical eyes, or what we can touch with our hands or whatever. And I don't think I consciously thought, there are other, there is a spiritual world, or, there is a higher power, but I was definitely connected to it from a young age, and I loved it. Like, I remember I used to go to Sunday school when I was a kid, and I once got the idea in my head that I was going to pray. Like, this is not something in my family that was done, but I clearly had some sort of a connection, and I remember, like, getting down on my knees beside my bed, and so that was when I was a kid, obviously, and a lot has changed since then. I mean, I'm 42 now. I've been through a lot, lived a good chunk of life, but, yes, to answer your question, absolutely, there has always been something that I've felt connected to that has guided me along the journey, which has not always been easy, right? Life is not always lollipops and rainbows.
Yeah, and in those moments where it's not lollipops and rainbows, that's when the faith really carries us through. I gotta say, you saw a gnome? You saw a gnome in a tree? And it was in a tree? Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
I'm jelly.
For real. Like, I saw it clear as day, and it was sitting there smiling at me. I wasn't expecting to share that story, but yes, I did.
That is everything. Like hearing you talk about your experience, you didn't even ever pause to even question whether there was more than the physical world. You just had an inherent sense of knowingness that there was. That's why you were just drawn to prayer, because and that's why you saw a gnome and you just recognized it as a gnome and you just accepted it. Because somewhere, I think, like, inbuilt within you, and maybe like inbuilt within all of us, is just this knowing there is something more. Even if we don't know, like, where it is or what it is or how it is, especially amongst Pisces moon people, but I think amongst, like, everyone, like, I hope amongst everyone, because I think the darkest thing in this world is to be here without any faith in anything else, to think that all that is just what you see. That's heartbreaking, right? But it's like
Yeah,
the magic
definitely.
reached out and touched you. You know what I mean? Practically, the magic came and sat in your tree.
Yeah. Yeah, and thank goodness it did, right? Because it did plant that seed in me where I knew for sure that there was something more. And yeah, it is so helpful to know that when you are going through tough times, that is totally when you need the faith. You need to know that, like, there's a larger purpose for any suffering you may be going through. Like, that's so important, because otherwise you can just get totally lost and downtrodden, you know, by what's going on. And it's like, it allows you, the faith, I find, allows you to have that more expanded perspective. Like, of course, you're going to feel the same emotions. You're going to feel really low sometimes, but you can then kind of lift yourself out of it and just choose to say, even though I'm struggling so much right now, even though I don't know why this is happening to me, I can try to trust that some good will come of this, right?
Yes. Yeah, and I think that's the fundamental, aspect of faith in many ways is in the not knowing, right? It's in the surrender to the fact that we don't understand, why is this happening in our life, or how could this be? How could this gnome be in this tree? like we fundamentally, like, whatever the phenomenon is cannot truly be understood. And that's the core essence of God, source, the universe, the higher power.
Yeah.
It can't be fully understood, but it can be felt and experienced in a certain way. And to me, like, the whole entire journey of life is a journey of faith. Like, I'm thinking in this moment of, like, the Fool, like, at the beginning, like, of the tarot, the Fool card. And, like, to take that first step on that path, and that Fool, like I feel like all of us, like, even when we think that we're not acting by faith, we are. Right? Like, to even just to go forward in our life without knowing, we don't truly know. Like, and I think even in the past week on this planet, there's been various natural disasters and things that people didn't know were coming that changed their life. But, like, the courage to keep going forward, and the faith, like, wow, like, in life, like, in the looking back, I faced so many different things, and, like, I'm still here and I'm still going through, and, like, there's something here that's helping me through all of this, and the faith that, like, that'll always be. I don't know, something about that for me, like, it is critical every day. And in difficult times, like when I've been ill, or my parents went through a divorce, or, just I've had to move 21 times actually in the past 10 years. And during these times, like, just to put in my best and believe that it's going to be okay. Like, that to me is the difference between, like, a life worth living and one that is misery, right? Because when you don't have faith, or you don't have trust, or you think everything rests on your shoulders, like, it's all up to me, and if I mess this up, everything's gonna fall apart, that creates a lot of misery. But the other side of that is, like, if you believe, like, okay, because I always think we should do our best, right? Like, but I do my best and I put in the most that I can. And, like, there's some other force here. And I think, like, it actually doesn't really matter that much. This may sound like a dramatic thing, but specifically what we believe that force is, because, like, I guess I just think, like, okay, there's people and they follow Islam, for example. And then there's people that are Jewish. There's people that are Christian. And across the board, science shows that anyone who has a faith or belief in something higher than themselves has greater resilience. It doesn't actually matter what religion they follow or what they believe in. It just matters that they believe in something.
Well, exactly. And I think the thing that faith gives you is something to fall back on to stop yourself from taking fear-based actions. And I think that's, like, tend to think of things sometimes like in the mechanical sense. Like I'm always wanting to understand, okay, like what is while we obviously cannot understand, the true essence of the higher power that underlies everything, which, like you, Maya, I believe is a loving, benevolent, consciousness, force, whatever you want to call it, we can still try to understand, okay, like I did something then that didn't result in, a very good outcome, versus another time when I was able to get to sort of stabilize myself and not do something or not say something, out of fear. And that's, I find, when the faith element really kind of kicks in and it lifts you out of whatever predicament you were in. Even if it's a small lifting out, like where you just sort of feel a little bit better or whatever. But like it's like the magic happens when you choose to trust that what you see in front of you or what you're experiencing is not actually happening to punish you. You might have those thoughts or you might feel like there's something to really be afraid of. But if you can just for a split second stop yourself from, like, I really think it's about the action. You can stop yourself from taking an action that would kind of uphold that fear-based view or perspective, then that's when, in my experience, the magic happens and you end up suddenly having, miracles can happen then. So does that make sense? Like, I don't know. That's the way I think about it.
Oh, totally. Yeah. I think that faith is the antidote to fear, which is like what I kept hearing you say like over and over again in these various different ways. And it has a true power to it, like the faith itself. Now, I want to say, like, my faith is like real and powerful. Like I 100% believe that absolutely every breath, every fiber of creation is underlined by a divine power. So like, I really, really believe like everything is good. Everything is a blessing. Everything is unfolding as it should. Like all of this kind of stuff. But even if you're still developing faith and you're like still like leaning into it, like if you make the choice, like my website address, my blog is choosefaithnotfear.blogspot.com, because in the beginning stages, it's a choice. Like some of us are born with it in our hearts and it never leaves us. But most people at some point in time have a crisis of faith and you have to make a choice. And like you're saying, it's best expressed in actions. But whether it's like the thought level, word level, action level, like to let it inform your behavior, that's where miracles happen. Where it's like, okay, I could, like, I have a really important conversation that I need to have right now. Or even like a lot of people are struggling with dating right now. Or even if it's like a first date, like I can come to this in a defensive posture from a place of fear that I'm going to be taken advantage of or things like that. And I'll get this outcome. Or I can come with faith in the goodwill of the other person, faith in the possibility of this interaction, faith in what can come from our connection, faith that we were drawn to each other for a reason, faith that there's something that will come out of this, whether or not it's a relationship, faith that this moment, this is happening for a reason. Like, and I just think that even like if by some crazy circumstance you were wrong, like, like there was no basis for the faith, like still your entire experience of living life would be made much better by having the faith throughout every day. Yeah. And I always go back to that. And it's similar with hope as well. Like to lose all hope is a great misery. And even I think sometimes back, like to difficult things I've gone through in life, there have been times where I had hope and the hopes were not realized. But the experience of having hope was so beautiful that in and of itself, it was worthwhile, even when it didn't yield results. And like I experienced a similar phenomenon with faith. Like the experience of truly feeling faith embodied is so beautiful that in and of itself, it's worthwhile, even if what you had faith in turned out to not be exactly as you thought it was. So it's
I mean, you're an amazing example of faith. Like I will say, like you are the most it feels weird to use the word this way, but like you are the most faithful person I have ever met. And, you know, I aspire to be at your level, Maya, honestly, with that. But yeah, I agree with you. And it's like, there are times also, like when we choose faith over fear, like your website address does, it is a beautiful experience, and it can completely transform the experience as well. Like, you know, going through, like I remember when I was going through my divorce or making the decision rather to end, you know, my marriage basically, and choosing to just believe that it was the right thing, even though, like, I don't know, looking back, I'm like, how did I even do that? And I guess it's because I too have faith. Like, I just somehow knew that I was going to be okay. And I did turn out to be okay, you know, like I listened to that sort of whisper of intuition within me. I didn't know Maya then. If I had, I would have come to you for psychic guidance, but I trusted my inner knowing, and I allowed my faith that everything was going to be okay, even as a single mom, like, to carry me through. And yeah, it's amazing what happens when you stick with the faith as best as you can. But you don't have to be perfect at it either, right? Like, that's the great thing. You just have to just sort of have these little micro alignments with it as, you know, as the energy behind the choices you make and your behaviors.
Yeah, and as you align with it in those micro moments, you see micro miracles. You really, really do. Yeah. Even just the way it can shift, like, you from having, like, a terrible, terrible day to, like, suddenly things are feeling okay. That is an alchemy, like, in and of itself. And I think when it comes to things like facing divorce or, like, the big life events that you help people with, often if we really can take a step back out of the intense stress of the moment, you can almost feel like a faded element. Like, there's almost this sense, even though we don't have proof, like, we don't actually have, unfortunately, like, the real soul contract right in front of us to look at and be like, oh yeah, that's right. Okay,
like a piece of parchment.
Oh yeah, like the actual, like, parchment. But if you like, when you can get space from the drama of the situation, you can feel like, at some level, I knew this was going to happen. Or, like, at some level, I sense that this was part of the plan. This was part of a higher plan. At some level, I sense, and it can be hard, again, during moments of acute stress, but, like, I sense that good eventually will come of this, or this is somehow leading somewhere. And some sense, I sense some kind of benevolent force behind this. In some way, I sense that it will be okay. And, like, for you, like, it has been. Like, you and your son have built this beautiful connection and found love and found, like, not that it's been easy at every moment, but just to say, like, it probably has been better than what you thought it would be during your worst fears. And life usually is. Like, life usually doesn't, like, the things we fear the most almost never happen. And
true. True. Hardly ever at all. Yeah.
Yeah, I think, like, if I think about my worst fears, they've actually not transpired. And that's where you get the quote, like, the greatest thing to fear is fear itself, because actually the fear is miserable, usually more miserable than, like, the actual experience. And on the flip side, the faith is so good. You know, the feeling of that, the feeling of trust, the feeling of being held by something higher, something more, whatever you choose to believe in. It underlies reality with this sense of warmth and protection. And I feel like in a world like this, we need that. Big time.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah, completely agree. Yeah. And just to even have that lightly held thought that you come back to when you get overwhelmed, or when you start to feel like depression creeping in, or your high anxiety, like, all things work together for good. That's one of my favorite phrases. I don't know who said that or where it comes from, but it's like, even if something goes quote unquote wrong with one situation or like one outcome or one area of your life or whatever, I always think of it as like the universe then, or God, source, and the angels, as you I like how you kind of use one one title for all of them as like a unit. It's like it adjusts, like it recalibrates in another area so that overall you're still going to end up where you were always supposed to be, right? You're still going to end up having the fulfilling experiences and experiencing all the love that you came here to have, even if it's not with this one person, or even if like something happens with this other thing. Like it does seem to always course correct in such an amazing way. Like it's, yeah. And just to think of it that way, I find is so helpful.
Did you say the quote, all things work together for good? Is that it?
Yeah. Yeah.
That one, I've never, no one's ever said that to me before. Like, all things work together for good. But that feels like straight from the guides itself. I got a lot from my nanny, like when I was little. Everything happens for a reason. Because I think
yeah.
that, like, I personally like work on faith every day, and my faith is nowhere near where I want it to be. So it's interesting that you say like that it's the biggest faith. Like, it is big. There's no doubt. But it's nowhere near where I want it to be. But part of the reason why like it is where it is, I think, is because I just, my distress was so obvious when I was little. I would get real let down by just, basic things, like I drop my sandwich on the ground, or like stuff like that. Like I would just be like, oh no, like reality is falling apart, like everything's gone wrong and stuff. And like my nanny would say, no, everything happens for a reason. And, like the dog was meant to eat that sandwich. Can't you see the dog's hungry? And since you dropped it on the ground, you can't eat it now, and the dog can have it, and this and that. And so, like, that was my first, like, introduction, I guess, into faith, like, in terms of on a mindset level, is, okay, everything happens for a reason. And because I was told that when I was, like, 1 year old, 2 years old, 3 years old, I definitely did start to believe that. I do believe that. I mean, and then since then I've had near-death experiences and things like that have kind of shown to me, oh, actually, yes, there really is a divine order behind everything that's happening here on earth. But before that, it was faith. And faith is what we have when we don't have proof. Like when we don't have scientific evidence, but we have direct interaction with the phenomenon in some way. And I think most of us, if we're honest about our lives, like there's moments where we've had direct interaction with a divine and benevolent force that underlies our life creation. And we may not understand how that happened or what it is. But after that experience, we have the ability to hold a space of faith. That force, whatever it was, whatever it is, however it's come to know us, that it'll be there when it's needed. And just the existence of it makes life a little bit more tolerable. You know what I mean? Like each and every day for me.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it gives you that sense of like, okay, even if something crazy and, so-called negative happens, I can fall back, just on my faith, right? And that it's going to be okay. And like 9.9 times out of 10, it does turn out to be okay. It might not be on the timeline that you want, or it might not play out exactly the way you hoped, but yeah, just having that like positive expectation is key, I think, for sure.
The feeling of being supported by something is key. That, like you mentioned it before, like this idea, like if the moment you start believing you're being punished, you're gonna struggle. You know what I mean, with the experience of daily living. But the faith that it's not a punishment, the faith that you're loved, the faith that it's leading to something, and like the very fact that you're alive right now, given everything, Like how many potential car accidents there could have been, how many potential disasters there could have been. The very fact that I'm alive after having experienced anaphylaxis so many times. The very fact that like somehow these mystical devices that we call phones are supporting an international call between us. The very fact that we know each other in the first place. The very fact that we're having this conversation today. Like all of this is underlined by something more, like a greater force.
Yeah.
And anybody who is guided to listen today, like something that we don't fully understand has guided them there. That's my sense. That's my sense. But I've enjoyed discussing faith with you today because I think that for me it is a core part of my life. But the moment I start to forget it, the moment I start to take it for granted, the moment that faith becomes anything but the center point of my life, suffering is increased. And so I think just to keep at the forefront and keep in the heart that flame of faith, if you will, to keep the flame lit for the faith and the belief and the goodness and the experience and even the invitation for some sort of higher power to work in our life and to come to us. And I just feel like it adds a whole dimension to life that I want everyone to know and understand and experience because it makes life so much better. At least that's been the case for me. And would you say it's been the case for you?
Oh, for sure. And I mean, I have my moments, of course, where, especially like when going through extended, I've been through periods where things have seemed very dark and I have kind of temporarily forgotten, about, okay, just connect to my faith and that everything will be okay. And then you'll feel things start to shift and then you'll see things start to shift. So, I mean, I'm not perfect with this by any means, but it is like the ultimate spiritual tool you can have in your toolkit, I would say. So yes, I completely agree, Maya.
That's what we can call this. The ultimate spiritual tool in your toolkit. An interview?
Yeah.
The only good thing about losing faith is that you get to find it again. And so I've gone through my periods too where I've forgotten a little bit or lost my way with my faith, and there's nothing that feels better than finding it again. And
for sure,
that's the best thing. So I'm just hoping for anybody who spent the time listening today, if you've been feeling out of touch with your faith and belief in something higher and something more, that today's conversation has gotten you back in touch with it a little bit, and that you begin to feel that flame of faith in your heart growing and burning brighter, and that it's a life-giving force for you every day, more and more. Because we all deserve to have these life experiences where we feel loved, supported, and connected to something benevolent and good and loving. And I just hope everyone's faith gets expanded more and more.
Yeah, me too. Beautifully said, Maya.
So thank you all so much for joining us today. Thank you for listening, and thank you, Amanda, for being a special guest. If anyone would like...
Thank you for having me.
Yes. Oh, it's been a pleasure. If anyone would like to connect more with Amanda or connect with me, details about both of us, links to our websites, and contact information will be down in the description box below. And we welcome all of your comments. If you'd like to hear us discuss any other topics, let us know in the comments below. And thank you so much for joining us. Have a great day.